This video will detail a rather interesting comment that I got on, I believe it was the video Prometheus Unbound, where I talk about managerialism, what managerialism seeks to do in terms of the 15-minute cities, and this type of ghettoization of the urban environment and the corralment of the human population into the urban environment. And, well, I'll just read out the comment. It's quite startling, should we say. Initial remark: we don't need to build cities around cars. We should build them around people. People should be able to walk to work. We need good public transportation. Yes, we need smaller, closer cities. No one should be against 15-minute cities, unquote. All of this is platitudinous. I mean, for example, people should be able to walk to work. How can you walk to work if you're in the suburbs? That is inconvenient. But the way he frames it, again, it's a rhetorical trick, which tells me this is probably a bot. Interestingly, his account name was deleted user with, a string of digits after it. So, I mean, it's rather suspicious. But people should be able to walk to work. The way he frames that is that it is a right that people don't have right now, right? As opposed to an inconvenience that would be placed upon them to do so. Of course, if your work is close enough to walk to, then it is in your best interest to walk to it. But if you live out in the suburbs or the rural areas, and you need to go and get into the city to go to your place of employment, then you have to take a car, because public transportation, at least in the UK, at least in Scotland, is absolutely atrocious. I don't know how it is where you may dwell, but it's absolutely atrocious here. You couldn't plan your journey to work via public transportation, and it gets even worse. It gets even more inefficient and less predictable when you go into the cities. Especially Edinburgh. I'm very close to Edinburgh, and I will not take a bus in Edinburgh because you can. They don't stick to the timetables. I've seen buses in Edinburgh appear 20 minutes prior to their scheduled time and then leave 2 minutes later. Like it's a game of Crazy Taxi or something. It's insane. You can't plan out your journeys. And not just even going to work. If you want to get around the city, you can't really plan your journey with bus travel. And that is the cheapest. That is, the most inexpensive form of travel. And that idea, we need good public transportation. Well, how do you do that when we have an aging population? And, the tax burden for the youth is 3 times what it was for the baby boomer and Gen X generation. And these generations are getting older. And you've got an inverted you have an inverted population pyramid with an aging population. How do you do that? If you're radically impeding people's ability to get into the cities, where all of the commerce, all of the employment, all of the high-paying jobs are, because of the lack of, primarily, governmental funds going towards rural and suburban areas, thus there's very little opportunities there, right? So thus everyone has to go to the cities, go into the urban areas to get jobs. Couple that with the contrived, the artificially inflated cost of living and the inflated prices of everything. You're forced into the cities, which is the plan, of course. I mean, how do you do that? How do you get good public transportation when you've impeded, the remaining youth? You've impeded them from getting gainful employment, thus contributing to the tax revenue, to the tax base. And this idea, yes, we need smaller, closer cities. Well, call me crazy here, but is that not what they were doing at the height of the Victorian era in Britain? They had, very close-knit, high population density, apartment blocks and estates and city blocks. That caused disease, it caused squalor, it caused bad sanitation conditions, all of this. In fact, those conditions were what bred the Malthusian nightmare, right? Even though it's a myth. It's what bred the Malthusian nightmare. It's what led to Malthus, Thomas Malthus, amongst other reasons, contemplating that idea, bringing it forward. And that idea, we don't need to build cities around cars. We should build them around people. They are built around people. The cars are a tool that the people use for convenience, right? For travel. It's akin to, pre-modern times. People saying, well, we shouldn't build, cities around horses. We should build them around people. Improperly worded here. What he means to say is, we shouldn't have roads that are designed to take large volumes of cars. Yes, I agree. It would be great to not have as many cars within the cities. But at the same time, I'm sure it would have been great for the Victorian era and, the pre-modern era to not have as many horses and horse manure within the cities. But it's a fact of cities. Cities are not... They're not hubs that should be built for mass human habitation. That's what the rural and suburban areas are for. Cities are merely commercial hubs. That's all they are. They're where business is done. They're not built around people. They're built around commerce, to facilitate commerce between people. That's it. That's it. They're not places people should be crammed into. It's insane. It really shows that, and I totally believe this individual's a bot. I can't believe somebody is this dense. Thus, what it shows is that the managerialists, firstly, are completely out of touch with reality. That they're cosmopolitan urbanites that have no conception of the world outside of these idyllic, in the British case, these idyllic small villages in the Cotswolds, right, where they've grew up, or the capital city. That's it. And their entire conception of the world is built around that. So in essence, they want the cities to more closely resemble the idyllic areas where they go once they leave the capital city. They want it to look like Martha's Vineyard. They want it to look like the Cotswolds, the villages in the Cotswolds, right? They want it to look like somewhere in Oxfordshire. They don't have a conception of anything out with those areas. They have a totally skewed, dreamlike, a surrealist vision of what they want for the world, and they're putting it into place. The issue is that 15-minute cities are not built around people. That is merely the guise the state is using. They are built around the control of people, in that one cannot leave their 15-minute zone more than 100 times per year, which will lead to ghettoisation. Couple that with the economic realities of the ever-increasing cost of living, and, like Hong Kong, isolated and non-familial pod living, or coffin apartments, domestic prison cells for the undead citizen, essentially, will become predominant within these zones. The lack of interzone commerce opportunities for the citizenry will produce a highly centralised system for the state in terms of control, but will ensure economic disparity and lack of upward mobility for the rest of the zone's citizenry, not to mention the dysgenic inbreeding that shall be taking place in these closed-off zones. On the contrary, no one should be in favour of 15-minute cities. It seems like most postmodern people, you simply read the euphemistic headline and assume the best without delving deeper through investigation. Incidentally, this is exactly what I stated in the video, Prometheus Unbound, that euphemism is utilised to hide the true intent of power. Fascism, in the modern era, does not arrive with military marches down Main Street. It arrives under jovial marketing slogans and brightly oversaturated colours, telling us of the utopia that shall await us all. Basic psy-war or marketing tactics, they have framed this well, and as we can see, these propagandistic efforts do not have to be terribly complicated to gain the overall compliance of the puerile non-thinking mass of plebeians. Moreover, what you desire is a purely service economy that is totally contained within the city. How could one possibly plan construction projects when most workers live in the suburbs of the city or in rural outcrops due to greater affordability? Do we wall them into the cities, whether they wish to or not, for inclusivity's sake? Quote, no worker left behind, unquote, if you will. Moreover, logistically, given that cities are unsustainable and gravely non-self-sufficient, merely being hubs of commerce and services, then they rely on rural and suburban workers and their productivity and resources to survive. Do we also wall these people into cities? I believe you gravely misunderstand the concept of 15-minute cities and of cities. They are involuntary. That is the 15-minute city. Everyone shall be brought into them as a way for the state to centralise all control, by centralising and controlling the movements of the population, and it shall further constrict the upward mobility of the people, and hence, like all centralised states, innovation shall stagnate. Like the Harappan civilization, these cities shall become mounds of the dead, post-industrial, post-modern tenements that are in disrepair and filled with the stench of wasted potential and undeserved human misery. A zombie city. However, we must say they will be permitted to walk to work. If their work or the service job sector survives the dissolution of the majority's purchasing power due to the radical and disruptive restructuring of the polis and its population's very mode of existence, that will be coupled with accompanying technologies of socio-economic domination to maintain people in these high-rise hovels and claustrophobic zone conditions. The CBDC system and programmable currency, geofencing, timed credits, AI governance, the destruction of upward mobility and the middle class by contrived austerity, artificial wombs leading to a synthetic species of expendable and dirt-cheap workers, and biodigital augmentation eventually leading to a centrally controlled Internet of All Things, the new God, according to Yuval Noah Harari. You clearly have not read any of the documents pertaining to the 15-minute cities from the WF, or even Harari's work. Of course, the various governments of the world also have documents pertaining to their plans regarding 15-minute cities, which, lo and behold, simultaneously all seem to coincide with one another. It's almost like a conspiracy. The government guidance on 15-minute cities is merely marketing slogans, designed to incrementally phase in what I have just described above. Incrementalism, naturally, is the cautious course power will always take as a way to mitigate a potential rebellion from the slavish underclass they seek to establish through their policies. Public transportation also limits your freedom of travel, only going where the government desires for you to go. The system you are promoting, you dress it in the very thin veil of utopianism and freedom, but ultimately it would lead to horrid and horrific despotism, an annihilation of freedom. Whatever mode of transportation that is available to the government and permits the greatest range of travel provides the greatest economic and social potential to a people, to permit them to flourish and prosper through economic connectivity and the hopefulness for the future that underpins all innovative endeavours. Your promoted system would lead us all to despair, destitution, and the dilapidation of the polis itself. Quote, smaller, closer cities, unquote. You mean overpopulated high-rises and coffin apartments, as we see in Hong Kong. Although, unless you desire depopulation by your notion of smaller, closer cities. Moreover, if cities were not built around cars, then how would your just-in-time logistical systems work? How would the non-self-sufficient city maintain its necessary constancy of food, delivered goods, basic amenities, your prime Amazon deliveries, your entertainment systems, the material required to maintain and repair the key infrastructure for the city? All of that hinges upon cities being built around cars. Cars are mere tools, used by the people, and if one does not have a car, then they must rely upon public transportation to travel into cities, as cities are supported and supplemented in their entirely artificial state by the rural areas and suburbs. If we have car-free cities, then this puts greater pressure and crucialness on the public transport system being at peak efficiency, which it evidently is not, and will never be with our ageing population and decaying civilization. If you impede people from entering cities at a time where the suburbs and rural areas are without any meaningful professional opportunities that pay a livable wage, forcing young people into the cities to look for gainful employment, then you are slowing that crucial taxable revenue and the necessary economic growth to support and fund, as of the present moment, the unfunded liabilities of social security and pensions, caused by the inverted population pyramid of near-majority retirees. You seem to be a dreamer, a hopeless idealist, and clearly you have not taken any of this into consideration before you made your inane and malformed abomination of a comment. You're simply hopped up on marketing-derived good vibes. Please excuse my vitriolic tone, but I find willful ignorance inexcusable. In truth, the only way that you can achieve what you have described in your comment above is by mass depopulation and the violent restructuring of society by non-negotiable draconian policies. Alas, this is indeed how the managerialist seeks to eventually play it. But until such a time, the 15-minute city and its accompanying technological systems are marketed in warm and fuzzy sloganeering.